here's a new episode of Full Body Frights. Hey guys, this is Emily. Unfortunately, Ashley's having some technical difficulties tonight, but we are so lucky that we have Jay Wall from Jay vs. Horror. Hi Jay, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Good, good. So y'all check him out. It's awesome. Jay vs. Horror. It's fantastic. And new stuff always coming out. So tonight we're going to be talking about the 1990 psychological horror thriller masterpiece, Jacob's Ladder, as well as the phenomenon of the Mandela effect. So I'll begin by reading the back of the VHS for Jacob's Ladder. Director Adrian Lyne from Fatal Attraction fame takes you on an intense, horrifying journey with a shocking ending that will haunt you forever. Tim Robbins is Jacob Singer, a man who lives in a nightmare. Wounded in Vietnam, he's now back at home in New York City. Torn between the memories of his son and terrifying wartime demons, Jacob is slowly losing his grip on reality. His beautiful girlfriend, played by Elizabeth Pena, only adds confusion to his life, drawing him into a web of sexual intrigue. But ultimately, it's his friend Louis who turns out to be the only one Jacob can truly count on. So, your thoughts?
Well, that's kind of a rough description of the film, isn't it?
I think it would be kind of hard to summarize it, period, you know?
Yeah, without giving anything away or saying too much, but...
And we do spoilers here, so, you know.
I would say I always liked Elizabeth Pena's character in this movie. I think she's one of the underrated parts of the film, playing the girlfriend, Jessie. I kind of had a crush on her when I was, a little bit after this came out and everything. So I didn't see that she was a problem for him. I thought she was trying to help him out.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah. So really in this movie, we have it's really a war movie, a horror movie, a thriller. I mean, it's pretty much everything in the kitchen sink, but somehow it works. We have him as a postman. He's come back from Vietnam and he's working for the post office, and he is starting to experience these really insane visuals and demons. He thinks, which he starts beginning to think are something to do with Vietnam, because some really weird stuff happens at the beginning when they're in Vietnam. They seem to be hallucinating. So he meets up with a friend. The friend ends up dying from a car bomb, and they try to, get this taken care of with an attorney. The attorney drops it because he says they were all dishonorably discharged. So he finally meets up with this guy that's been following him, who's played by Michael Craven, who is awesome. And he finally finds out that this is a dude. What happened was that they had all killed each other because they were given a psychological, like a hallucination drug, to enhance performance in the war, but it had ended up causing them to kill each other. So, it kind of goes, you don't know where you are ever in the movie, if you're in a reality, if you're in a fantasy. Is he with his old family, with Macaulay Culkin, who was actually uncredited as his son that dies in he gets hit by a car. Is he with his old family, or is he with his girlfriend in this apartment? You don't really know what's happening. He doesn't really know what's happening until the end, and you still kind of don't know what's happening. So, anyway, I guess that would be my summary of it. It's still pretty convoluted, I think. But what are your thoughts on the movie?
Well, this is an era where Vietnam and the soldiers coming home and stuff like that was used a lot as a plot line, actually. And, they don't do it anymore. Today, when they talk about soldiers coming home, they're coming home from Iraq or Afghanistan. And it's a little bit different situation because I know those guys had a hard time too there, but at least when they come home, they get a handshake and thank you for your service, 10% off at Wendy's, something. Um, a lot of these guys that came home in the 70s, they got spit on when they got off the airplane, and they got told that they raped babies, and some of these guys that just spent years in the jungle, they come home, the first people they see are calling them names and telling them they're horrible people. So they went through a depression that a lot of people don't understand. The people that came home from World War II, that was the greatest generation. And even the guys that are coming home now, even though they have some PTSD issues and things like that, some of them, but they still get embraced by society a little bit. And these guys were treated horribly. And so then when they started to develop psychological problems, and there seemed to be a large number of the community of these guys who came home who did, then they were kind of made fun of. Then it's oh man, they're having flashbacks and they took too much acid in the jungle and stuff. So it's really kind of sad the way these guys were treated. You can see that in other stuff. I mean, Rambo was a Vietnam vet. Magnum PI was a Vietnam vet. They worked it into a lot of different things to kind of give characters vulnerability. It's done so much differently in Jacob's Ladder because, in a way, even though this film is wild and it's visually almost like watching someone's delusion, it still kind of takes it seriously more than a lot of other people have with the issue. And it gives these guys the benefit of the doubt, that you don't know what could be happening to them. You weren't there. You didn't experience what they experienced, so there's no way of knowing what they're going through now. And then, of course, the end, I think once you see the end, it's kind of like The Sixth Sense in a way where once you see the end of this film, the next time you watch it, it's almost just as interesting as it was the first time because now you have all the missing pieces and you can kind of put things together. I thought, given the ending, that's why he's even a mailman, because it's a uniform. You know what I mean? It's something similar in his mind. It's not real, but I love this movie a lot. I give it, like an 8 out of 10. It's one of my favorites to go back and rewatch from that era because right around 1990, there's like Misery and a few other good movies, but there's not a ton of stuff that's very memorable. So yeah, Tim Robbins and Elizabeth Pena, Danny Aiello in this. Great cast, great story. It's very sad. That's the only problem I have with it. It's heart-wrenching to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. That era did not have much, even for slasher movies, which I love. I mean, it had like Slumber Party Massacre 3, but yeah, it is heart-wrenching, and I feel like you're taking, like, every time I watched it, and I didn't watch it till a few years ago. I don't know why, but I watched it over and over when I first saw it, and I saw something different every single time. And one of the things that does, really come out at me is the visual that Adrian Lane is. What is his name? Adrian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that he uses with speeding up motion for actors. So he has some of these demons that he films them at like 2 whatever the RPM. It's not RPM, but it's whatever. But he speeds it up to 24, and so you get this like really fast shaking effect, and it scared the shit out of me. And it always has. It still does. It is like a fever dream. I do usually say, I've noticed recently that I say this about a lot of movies, that especially horror movies, that they don't really know what kind of movie they're doing, or they're confused about what the movie is. And in this movie, you could, like, I don't think you can say that, even though it's really, really I don't know, like, it's like a fever dream. I mean, there's just so much going on, and there's this war story, there is this like horror story, there's what reality is he in, like, is he dead, is he alive, like all of this stuff, but somehow it fits, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, what do you think about that?
It's an interesting film in a sense where a lot of films when they have these delusion scenes in them, or they have these just wild imaginatory scenes. It's hard to find a place where they're grounded. In this film, the whole thing is grounded by his life that you assume that he has with the girlfriend, right? Like the life that they have in the city and all that. But the further you go, it's like the less you really, what is real? Is there anything here I can stand on that's solid to give me a read on the rest of it? And it just goes on like that. I don't think it was too popular when it came out. I saw it, pretty much right after it came out. We rented it and I watched it. So I was probably 11. Every time I've watched this, I watched it around that era. I watched it in my 20s, 30s. In each one of those decades in your life, you're the smartest person you're ever going to be. That's what you believe anyway. Mm-hmm. So every time I saw this, I got something different out of it, and that's the truth. The first time I saw it, it just creeped me out as a kid. I just thought it was creepy. Like you said, the scenes with the shaking head that they went on, they did that, 100 times in other films. But nobody did it this good, I don't think, because they showed it a very minimal amount to a very effective range. And then seeing it later on in life and picking up on all the other aspects of it, of war is hell. Is Jacob Singer stuck in hell? Is Jacob Singer stuck in his own mind? Is that just as bad as hell? And so on and so forth. And it's just whatever happened to him or whatever you take away from it. I mean, in my mind, at the end of this film, it's revealed that he's dead. Or that he's dying. He's basically seeing his entire life flash before his eyes, but also
he has his whole life has been, or like whatever you've seen in the movie, like with the girlfriend, at least has been his, like, whatever he's been thinking as he's dying.
Right. And they say that when this is what they say, who knows, a lot of people don't get to come back and tell us, but they say that when you die or when you start to die, that your brain releases a chemical reaction that, keeps you from freaking out about it. It's like a euphoric thing that keeps you from freaking out about it. And for all we know, that that could be what he's going through here. It might not be totally chemically induced outside of what's happening. It could just be what's in, his mind just shutting off and going to sleep or whatever. But it's interesting all the way around, and it's sad, man. And I would say the one thing that I always get out of it is that it's the government's fault. Don't trust the government.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I think my favorite scene actually is the scene where Mike, I can't remember his name in real life. I mean, I remember his name in real life, but not in the movie. The guy now I can't remember his name either. Matt Craven's character, Michael Newman, he plays.
Right, the chemist.
I was about to call him Michael Crane, so that was maybe, I don't know, that was maybe the Mandela effect. But that scene I love so much because that's when it really comes to, and I love the whole these weird tests and stuff that went on during Vietnam, like learning about that kind of stuff, and just like the messed up things that they did. So I really like that scene. Plus, like at the end, you're like, oh my God, like this is not what I was expecting at all. At all.
Have you ever seen a movie called The Banshee Chapter from 2013?
Mm-mm.
That movie it's got some, it opens up with some stuff that talks about, they really did a lot of these experiments. This shit sounds made up, but it's not all completely made up. They did a lot of these experiments on people. And that's what that film starts talking about. And even like there's an apology from President Clinton in there when he's talking about all these hundreds of people.
But I can't remember what they're called. The test where they gave the guys syphilis. He had to apologize for that. But like gases being let off in Florida and stuff like that.
Different experiments, yeah, but mainly this one drug that people.
I think I know what you're talking about.
People still seek this out and try to take it. It's like DMT, but with something else added to it, and it's basically a drug that when you take it, it makes you feel removed from yourself. You know what I mean? You become an existential thing, or you believe you are. And so some of these guys, they tripped hard, and it was so hard that you start getting into talking about reality being perception, and what are these guys, if they believe something hard enough, where the hell did they go,
Right. Yeah.
And so that's kind of like where it's at with me for Jacob's Ladder. I mean, I know some of these things actually happen to people. I know there's hundreds of studies there's studies where they put subconscious drugs in the water supply of a whole town as a primer. And then they would sense, subconscious. I know this sounds like I'm a crackpot conspiracy.
No, some of this stuff is real.
I read this in a book, by the way. It was not something that that I just made up in bed the other night. No, I actually read this, that they did these kind of things, and it wasn't something that was serious that really messed with people, but it was like a drug they put in the water that was basically a primer. Then they could just go around and mess with people and see if it was working. And it was crazy, you know what I mean? Like that they did this stuff to people. But yeah, so this one always makes me sad. It really does, because there's so many guys out there that went through so much that got just mistreated and, lost. People would look at, a vet a certain way back then, and it was just sad. And
I think that still happens with today's veterans, not as bad as Vietnam, but I think a lot of times, they don't have the resources to help them, and some people don't agree with, a lot of people don't agree with what's happening, and so
that's true.
These people are coming back with hardly any resources to help them psychologically, and they've seen so much, and they go back, they become alcoholics, and sometimes they end up having shootouts with the police. That happened to a vet in my hometown of Maryville, and it was kind of seen as like the best case scenario was that he got shot by them, because which is horrible, but because it was gonna be worse, that he was gonna kill a lot of people if that hadn't happened or something. He had come back being a sniper like a few times, and just went nuts from it, and no one would give him the help that he needed. So yeah.
Well, you take an average person, you raise them for 18 years of their life on apple pie and going to church on Sunday, and being the captain of the football team, and then one day you put them in the middle of the jungle and say you got to kill a bunch of people or they're going to kill you. Go. That's right. That's your mind is not prepared to make that switch and stick with it for very long without something bad happening. Or in the guys today, I think the thing with the guys today,
they train with Call of Duty. They actually used Call of Duty to train military now.
See, I'd be in a lot of trouble because I can't play Call of Duty unless I can respawn, and I don't think that happens in Afghanistan. So
no.
But yeah, it's always it's a sad movie. I like going back to it, but then every time I rewatch it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I haven't watched this in a couple of years. It's sad.
Yeah, I'm actually doing another recording with Alex tomorrow about Sorority House Massacre, so I watched that after, which was like a really good palate cleanser.
That's the thing, though, right? It's like taking the medicine instead of taking the Kool-Aid, because you have the subgenres that you love, like the slashers and creature features and stuff, that you can just turn your mind off and enjoy it and just go with it. But then there are some of these horror movies like The Exorcist, Jacob's Ladder, and stuff that you feel obligated. Yeah. You're obligated as a fan. You got to go back every now and then and watch them. But then you're like, when you watch it, you're like, damn.
Yeah.
This is terrifying or scary or sad. And you're like, I don't want to watch this anymore right now.
Yeah, I remember every time I watch Texas Chainsaw, which is at least once a year, sometimes more. I do the same thing with Bully, which is not a horror movie, but might as well be, with Brad Renfro. It's one of the most disturbing movies, and also probably in my top 5 favorite movies. Like, I will watch it about 4 times a year. Like, no, not many people. People are like, I watched that once. It was fine, but I'm not going to watch it again. But I don't know. There's just something about those movies that, like, but the screaming in Texas Chainsaw is so, like, I never realized until I was living around people. I was like, oh my God, this sounds like someone's like literally being murdered in my home. I can't do this.
See, those kids in Bully, they should have murdered him about 45 minutes earlier in the movie, and then they should have been quiet about it. And the movie would have been a little bit shorter. and a whole lot better.
Well, but the true story was not that.
No, but I mean, in that movie though, like they made his character so despicable that you were kind of sitting there going, "What are you guys waiting on?"
Well, yeah, but he was
Yeah.
despicable. But I don't know. I have a lot to say about that. Yeah, I think Nick Stahl's a great actor, but he was miscast just because Bobby Kent was actually like a heavy steroid user and like a huge guy.
Yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah.
so like it's not as believable. But anyway, that's a whole nother tangent. So I'm gonna go into like a little bit of trivia. And the first stuff has to do with what we were talking about with the drug testing, testing drugs, during wartime and otherwise. So it says the closing legend of the film mentions the testing of a drug named BZ in Vietnam. BZ is NATO code for a hallucinogen, which I'm going to butcher, called 3-quinus. Okay, hold on. 3-quinolindinsen. I don't know, benzylate, which was rumored to have been administered to U.S. troops during the Vietnam War in an attempt to increase their combat abilities. So I believe that. And there's a lot of, he used a lot of the case of using the thalidomide, which was a drug that I think it was banned in the U.S. pretty early, so there weren't really that many cases here. But in Germany and a few other places, this was a drug that was given to women who were pregnant, and it led to a lot of really, really horrible and horrific birth defects. And I think he used those birth defects as especially in the hospital scene when he's being taken through the mental ward and he's seeing all of these people and the guy with the 3 toes or whatever is climbing on the gate and stuff. That's definitely taken from pictures of kids with that whose mom had taken this drug. So I thought that was really interesting because I don't know, I'm into that kind of stuff. It's weird. But other interesting trivia to me was that Tim Robbins before this had been doing a lot of comedy, and he really, really wanted to do this because he wanted to do something that was not comedic, but because he wanted people to know that he could do other things. While the director had actually wanted Tom Hanks to be Jacob Singer, and curiously, the director had dropped out of doing Chariots of Fire, I think that's the movie, to direct this film, which that movie ended up having Tom Hanks in it. So,
you mean Bonfire of the Vanities?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I knew it was like Chariots of Fire
like,
way earlier.
I knew that when I said it. I'm sorry, guys. That means I'm not just reading this, okay? It's probably another, Mandela effect. Yes, Bonfire of the Vanities. I'm sorry. And so also the special effects were filmed live with no post-production. So that's pretty interesting, especially because some things were, they were kind of trying to add some stuff at that time. And most of the dialogue in the opening scene between the soldiers was improvised, which I thought was pretty funny because there's a lot of that masturbation talk that was all improvised between Ving Rhames and Tim Robbins. And I think it's pretty obvious that this movie was a major inspiration for the Silent Hill video game franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm going to say it again. I just think it's really funny that Macaulay Culkin was in this movie and uncredited. I mean, I know they didn't know who he was going to be, but at the same time, I'm like, come on, it's Macaulay Culkin. You should have known, but he's uncredited. And when I was rewatching it, I also noticed that Michael Imperioli, I think is how you pronounce his name, from The Sopranos, and he was in a couple episodes of Law and Order. I was like, oh my God, that looks totally like that guy in the scene where he's being taken in the stretcher, and it is him. It's him. He's the doctor that's like, he's asking, who did this to you? And Tim Robbins is like, Santa. And he's like, what? So that is Michael Imperioli, and he is not credited as well. So I thought that was super interesting. And I just want to say that I really love Tim Robbins in this movie, and I'm really glad it wasn't Tom Hanks. I don't think he could have. I'm sorry to say, I don't think he could have pulled it off the same way. And Tim Robbins is just adorable in this movie. Like, I just think he's the cutest. So,
it's an interesting film, and I think one of the things maybe the only thing we didn't talk about is the spirituality of it, because
the biblical, it's very biblical.
Yeah, I mean, the story's called Jacob's Ladder, and that's referring to like a place between heaven and earth or something. And also, it's a reference to Dante's Inferno by Dante Alighieri, which I just talked about the house that Jack built the other day, and it's got a similar vibe to it because of that, where he's on his final journey. And the guy who wrote it, he wrote some other stuff that was similarly interesting when it comes to spirituality. He said
that
this was
Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
Bruce Joel Rubin.
Yeah, Bruce Joel Rubin. He's a screenwriter and co-producer. He said that he saw it as a modern interpretation of the book Liberation Through Hearing During the Intermediate State, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. He also wrote some other stuff like Ghost, and he wrote Brainstorm, which had Christopher Walken in it, which was where people wore this machine that showed their thoughts, and somebody wore it when they died and caused this great freak out between the scientists working on it. And he also wrote Deadly Friend, which is co-wrote Deadly Friend.
Wes Craven, yeah.
Wes Craven film, which had some to do with life after death too, in a way. So very interesting, that this one guy had all those different concepts about life and death and whatever happened in between that. So it's a great movie.
So I will piggyback off that real quick and say I did find this information. It said in Bruce Joel Rubin's original screenplay, all of the demons who appear throughout the film were typical biblical demons with horns, wings, cloven hooves, etc. But director Adrian Lyne felt that this kind of imagery could very easily come across as comic, which would destroy the film. He felt that the fact that the imagery was so far from human lessened its impact, and as such, he decided he wanted the demons to be humanesque, but not quite human. So that's when he put in the stuff with the thalidomide scandal and the BZ stuff that they use over in Nam. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
And they cut 20 minutes of this too. So
the
first time they showed it, people freaked out. So there's no telling. I don't think I've ever seen a cut that had all 20 minutes of that back in it. So
I found some information on the scenes that were cut, but a lot of them were just like, there was the part with Tim Robbins and Matt Craven, whatever his name is, I'm still not remembering, was longer. And I'm sure there were some scenes with the faceless people and stuff like that was cut out, because that is pretty horrific for people. So. Okay, yeah. So I will move on to the other the unsolved mystery that we'll be talking about, which is the phenomenon of the Mandela effect. Are you ready?
I would prefer that we call it the Morgan Freeman effect, just for effect.
Oh my gosh, that is actually so true. Like, yes, yeah. The Morgan Freeman effect. So here's what the Mandela effect is. It occurs when a large group of people believe in an event occurred when it did not. There are many examples. It got its name when Fiona Broome, a self-identified self-identified paranormal consultant, detailed how she remembered former South African President Nelson Mandela dying in the 1980s in prison, although he lived until 2013. Broom described remembering news coverage of his death and even a speech from his widow about his death, yet none of it happened. If Broom's thoughts occurred in isolation, that would be one factor. However, Broom found that other people thought the exact same as her. Even though the event never happened, she was the only one who felt like it did. As a result, she wasn't the only one who felt like it did. As a result, the Mandela effect concept was born. So, what are your thoughts about the Mandela effect?
My thoughts are that a very famous black man died in the 80s, and his wife gave a speech about it, and there's some moronic white people out there who thought it was Nelson Mandela.
That's exactly what. Mm-hmm.
I mean, right? I mean, that's what. It's ridiculous. I mean, I understand the concept of memory being false and things like that. And like when I was a cop, they taught us about, false memory. And mainly the reason why they teach about that is because they say, look, if you're
Witnesses.
up there, if you're testifying, there's no reason to lie if you're a cop. I mean, unless you did something wrong. But, if you're an honest cop, there's no reason to lie ever, because you can always say, I would have to refer back to my initial report on that. That's why you write that report. So 6 months later, when somebody's asking you about it, if you don't remember something, you don't have to lie. You can say, it's on that report, whatever that says. That's what happened. It's kind of an out. You know what I mean? Because memory is bad.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's totally a real reason to use it. It has been used as an out for some corrupt people. But yes, normal people don't write down every single thing that they witness. So
no, and people forget things, and memory. Like we were talking earlier, and the way I've always seen it is memory is just like a construct. There's a template there for what you remembered, and then your mind kind of fills in the colors and the sounds, and sometimes you might see it in black and white. I've heard people tell me that before, that they remember things in black and white, and that's just kind of like a thing that we do as people. We have to have a way to tap into it, and so that's our key, is through adding all the color and stuff to it, so we can almost feel like we're back in that moment at that time. But
it's also to me, I don't remember what it's called, but when after you've learned the English language and can read it, or I guess any language for that matter, but I know specifically with the English language, someone can put up a whole article where they leave out letters in words. And you can still read the whole thing just because your mind knows enough to fix it, I guess. Well, so,
you ever talk to some of these, like if you talk to some of these paranormal investigators, one of the realest ones that I ever talked to told me that he had seen this several times with people, that they will say, look, this is one of the experiences I've had in my house. And so you listen to that experience, and the first place your mind goes is you think, well, I have seen that in a scary movie somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of it is that they have too. And whatever was happening to them in that moment, the only way that their mind could perceive it was the only way they've ever seen it actually happen, which is in a scary movie. And so that kind of, because we were talking about how, some people, it seems like they're very believable. When you talk to them, they're very believable. They're telling the truth.
Children, especially. I mean,
right. And then some people, you can tell that they're trying to get attention, or there's something else going on, that they're making up this story, or trying to make themselves believe this story. But it gave me a third option, which was that these things really are happening to those people. They just don't have any way to process it. And so the way it comes out, or the way they see it, is kind of the way they've seen it in scary movies or heard other people talk about it.
Yeah, and Ashley, I think, has some different opinions on it, but it's this Mandela effect. The whole conspiracy is that there's this alternate reality where these things are happening. And like I was telling you earlier, not on the podcast, but I do have my bachelor's in psychology. I have my graduate degree in counseling. So I'm not believing this just because I've learned a lot about false memory, groupthink. The more you're suggested something, the more you think of it like that's what happened. For example, this is really stupid, but I mean, it's honestly really stupid. So when did that U2 album come out? Joshua Tree, like 1990, 1989, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere around there, early
Okay,
90s.
so yeah, so I was like 4 or 5, and my dad watched. Well, my mom too, but I guess she just didn't care. But he would have been. We watched MTV all the time because it was just music videos then. And until I was like 20 or something like that, and I saw the music video for "With or Without You" by U2 again, I thought that Bono had was naked during the video. Who knows why? Because he's wearing I think a leather vest and jeans. He's completely like covered. But I just remember thinking, well, that's weird. He's naked. Like they're just letting this guy be naked. And I mean, I don't know what that was, but like maybe some untapped sexuality or something. I don't know. But like that clearly was not real. No, it's not real. But I mean, and then you have things like that famous test where they had, I can't think of the name of it right now. Listen, it's been about 10 years since I got out of grad school, so I'm sorry if I can't like name every single test. But I know there was one where they had a piece of paper with lines on it, and they were all different lengths. And they asked the people first, they just said, okay, which one's the longest? And they said, whatever one was the longest, they were like, oh, that's the longest one. And then they brought in a group of people. One person was not told about the experiment. The other people were told to say that another line was the longest that wasn't the longest. And at first, the guy that was being experimented on was like, well, it's clearly this one, this is the longest one. But the more the other people said, no, it's this one, it's this one, he finally was like, yeah, it's that one. It's that one. So, I mean, I just think like suggestibility. I think trauma. I think a lot of things like fuzzy trace memory. There's just a lot of like there are individual differences of how you perceive a situation. That's going to change how you see something. Like you and I could be on the same street and see something fucked up happen, and you could be standing like 5 feet away from me, and how I perceive the incident and how you perceive the incident is different. So, like I said, trauma is another thing. Sleep deprivation can cause this. Um, it just reminds me a lot of the daycare satanic panic stuff that was going on in like the late 80s, early 90s, where they were there was a lot of suggestibility by some psychologists to children that were in specific daycares. It didn't just happen in one. And they were coached into remembering something that didn't happen. And the stuff was horrifying. But when you read the transcripts or even listen to the interviews with these children, you can tell they're being coached into like, okay, say that, but it needs to be more. It needs to be more. And kids are notoriously very, like, they really want to please adults. That's kind of an innate characteristic of most children. And so it makes sense that they're like, oh, well, yeah, that did happen because they think that's what these people want them to say. And so it makes sense to me. I just think all of this is false memory.
Yeah, that was a bad deal. They ruined a lot of people's lives with that. And I think I remember like there was a whole town in California or something where ended up being like 35 kids or something went and said their parents were involved in this backwoods satanic cult where they were all meeting and swapping kids and all kinds. None of it was true. And the FBI still says to this day that they don't have any evidence of any like severely violent crime related directly to Satanism. there's cult crimes and stuff like that, but just not just pure. They were out worshiping the devil and they decided to sacrifice a bunch of people. They haven't found any of that yet, and I don't know. I mean, like, it's tough because when it comes to victims and stuff, you have to believe them to a certain extent. But like you said, in that situation, they created the victims, and the kids were like, okay, well, they're coming to your house to talk to you today, and if you're part of this now, you need, they're coaxed into it, or the whole way, and so yeah, it's terrible. As far as the false memory stuff, I mean, I don't know. It seems like I would almost trust an individual person with their story over a group of people, wouldn't you? I mean, if there's like 15 people telling you the same story, well, you would think that was odd.
I mean, it would depend on what it was, like.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really depend on what it was. At an age, with children, it's just a whole different ballgame with them. Like this stuff went on with the daycares, like satanic panic hysteria went on from 1982 until 2013. The Kern County child abuse, McMartin preschool trial, those were like really big ones. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it just depends. I mean, if I see, it's so hard nowadays to even think of an example because there's always like footage of stuff. So like with something like George Floyd or something like that, I probably would believe the group, but I also saw the video. So
a lot of people are into personal privacy, but I got to tell you something. If I was like 22 years old, 5'2", had blonde hair and blue eyes, and it was a co-ed at a college.
Are you me? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying. I would, with all the satellites and technology and stuff we have today, you could possibly be filmed 24 hours a day if you wanted to. And then you could just wear a little sign on you like you have in your front yard that says, this house is protected by, you can just put this body is protected by.
Yeah, just like, wear those around.
If anything happens to me, anytime one of those vans pulls up or anything, you just tell them, if anything happens to me, people are watching it right now. So there's not going to be any, misremembering what you look like or anything,
Right. That is interesting that you talk about that because this whole, especially with QAnon and stuff like that, it's like, it's still hard to know what to believe. Sometimes I'm not talking now. I was talking about George Floyd. I'm not saying that I didn't believe that. I clearly do believe that story. But,
they killed that guy.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I watched the whole thing, and it's one of the most, actually, like, for being such a horror fan, is probably one of the most horrific things I've ever seen in my life. So, but I know there have been times in the past, like, I know they did this. Yeah, I told you I've been watching that Dark Side of the Ring, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody was superimposing his face onto someone else's body to do something with pro wrestling. And like, I don't know, there is a lot of fake stuff out there on social media. So it's really hard. Sometimes it's hard when you're looking at stuff to know what's real and what's not. Because there are a lot of things that can be edited and chopped and like mixed up and stuff to where you're like, well, I believe that, but maybe it's not true.
I don't know. I think that it's a crapshoot, right? I mean, like, to be honest, like, probably 999 conspiracy theories out of 1,000 are totally false. It's just bullshit. But then I really
Waco.
Truly do believe there is one.
I
believe there is one in that 1,000 that I just, like, I'm one of those people where I can buy a lot of stuff, but I don't think that Lee Harvey Oswald killed John F. Kennedy. I think that's ridiculous.
Oh, no, I don't either. And
it's not possible.
I actually don't think the Martin Luther King shooting was all Henry Lee Lucas, his name.
Well, I don't.
He was way too dumb to plan all that. So.
It wasn't Henry. Henry Lee Lucas was the serial killer that.
Oh yeah.
Ran around with,
James Earl Ray.
James Earl Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many questions there about the police, the local police, and a bunch of other stuff. But,
and I will say I do believe Waco. Even though the group itself was like messed up, I do think that it was like a revenge on Ruby Ridge kind of like, let's get in here and like fuck with them kind of thing. But that's the only other one.
I think they were idiots. I think they
I
botched
do too.
from the beginning. And the FBI put themselves in a standoff they didn't have to be in, or the ATF, whatever it was. They put themselves in a standoff with those people that they didn't have to be in. And then once they got into it, they refused to back down, like, because that's some kind of, great sin or something to back down and not encourage violence. I mean, what was the end game there? A bunch of people are going to get shot. You're telling us there's innocent people in this compound. Why are you forcing a conflict? What sense does that make?
Yeah, because no one else seemed to have a problem with them. So, but this is going to be just another side note. But have you seen Waco? Oh, now I'm going to forget what it's called. Something of War. It's a documentary about Waco.
I'm not sure. I've watched a lot of stuff on it over the years, and I remember it happening pretty clearly.
Oh, The Rules of Engagement. That's what it's called. Waco, The Rules of Engagement. But it shows them, like, the ATF. They had buried a body that had gotten shot in the beginning of it, and they buried him outside, and the ATF had some, like, big, like, tractor, like, just continuously roll over it again and again just to, like, mess with him.
They had the whole thing with Jim Jones. Now, they didn't directly deal with him when all that went down, but the reason why it went down is because
Ruby Ridge.
They tried to, when they had the Jim Jones thing, when he poisoned all his followers, that all went down because an American senator went over there and wanted to verify that everything was okay. And on his way out, they freaked out about what he was going to tell people to try to shoot his plane down. And so Jim Jones knew. He was like, okay, they're coming to get my ass. And, this is the end. Right. So this is the same thing that happened with David Koresh. He wasn't going to let them come in there and take him alive.
I think they botched Ruby Ridge so poorly, though. I think it came so close to what happened to Ruby Ridge that they were like, we're not going to fuck this up, like, kind of thing. But they totally did.
They fucked it up. Yeah. They
in every way. Anyway, sorry for the tangent, you guys.
Yeah, we went off in a different direction there.
Okay, so I didn't give my stars for Jacob's Ladder. I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, which is by no means low. I might maybe in like 7.5 even. That's like really high for me. And as far as the Mandela effect, I think it's false memory, and I think it's a it's a thing that happens in your brain, and it's not an alternate reality. And you guys, you should be fine with that. It's okay. So, thank you so much, Jay, for being on this show with me today. Full Body Frights.
This turned into a bunch of craziness. I didn't know I was going to have to give opinions on American conflicts. But yeah, it was fun. I had a good time. And anytime you guys want to talk, I'm willing to chat with you.
Well, I don't know if I'm so sure after that comment, but but guys, follow us at Full Body Frights on any podcast platform. Our Insta is Full Body Frights, no spaces, and our Gmail is fullbodyfrights@gmail.com. And don't forget to look for Jay with Jay versus Horror. He's really, really awesome. He has great taste. He has awesome, fun interviews to listen to. So check him out. And thank you so much, Jay, for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.